You need to see this.
Dear editor, this is the murderer of 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo.
Paul Avery.
Robert Graysmith.
Are you okay?
It's a movie about a cat who hunts people for sport. People. The most dangerous game. Inspector Dave Kosky, SFPD.
Who am I speaking with?
This is the Zodiac speaking.
Robert.
Yes?
You're not gonna believe this.
Theron dies, Hartnell lives, Pepper dies. He gets so caught up with the women. Breaking Bad. Go fuck yourself.
Glenna said you were a cartoonist.
Who are you again? I just want to help.
What do you want out of us?
What?
What's your angle? This is good business for everyone but you.
I need to know who he is. I need to stand there. I need to look him in the eye. And I need to know that it's him.
Hi, welcome to Movie Umpers. Happy Halloween. I'm Bob Sham.
I'm Angela.
The sounds of your maybe dogs, and it is Halloween Hump Fest. We're deep in it every fucking weekday.
Every fucking weekday.
This month, a horror theme drop each day with a different theme. And on Thursdays, we're calling it True Threat Thursdays. Horrors based on actual events or alleged.
Sound like you said whores.
Horrors based on actual events. Alleged. There's a couple that probably merit a lot of skepticism. One that is true, but fairly exploitive, the one we talked about last week, which is a proto version of the real murder that we're talking about today. And out of all the True Threat Thursday movies we're discussing, technically you could probably call this one a thriller, but there was so much detail, so much involvement. Even the victims, even the survivors of the victims of this murderer were consulted onto this movie. Even just casually digging in a little bit, you can really go through a fucking web of nonsense when you're talking about this prolific serial killer.
Why don't you introduce that film and all the people I've ever had crushes on in my life?
Yeah, there's like 3 leads in this movie. Now, we're talking about Zodiac, and it's real easy to get into the lore of the case itself, even separate from this movie. And there have been a lot of interesting developments in the Zodiac case since this movie came out. This movie was responsible for rustling a lot of that shit back up. While this movie may technically be called a thriller, as with another True Threat Thursday movie we watched, there are maybe one of the scariest fucking scenes that we will discuss all month long is in this movie. And we'll talk more into detail about that. At the end of the episode, we'll get more into the true crime podcaster segment. But we're going to talk about the movie Zodiac from 2007, directed by David Fincher, written by James Vanderbilt, based on the book Zodiac by Robert Graysmith, who is a character in this movie. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo. Each of those guys could, at certain points in the movie, could be the lead here, right? Anthony Edwards, who great in this movie. Brian Cox, Elias Koteas, Philip Baker Hall, Chloe Sevigny, tons of people. That's just a drop in the bucket.
Ione Skye, Clea Duvall.
Yeah.
I just have to mention those because I'm not kidding when I say I have had crushes on almost everyone in this movie.
What a cast.
Even Anthony Edwards.
Anthony Edwards.
I don't mean like even, but I had a crush on him when it was Revenge of the Nerds days.
Even that bald motherfucker, Anthony Edwards.
Hey, maybe that's where it started. started.
Oh, yeah. I just reminded of you. I definitely was maybe closer to his body type when we first started dating. Cinematography by Harris Savides. Not to give the goose away so early, but I think we're talking about David Fincher's best movie here.
Absolutely.
And in terms of procedural thriller and how to represent, police work or reporting, and just the fact that there's just an intense amount of information, James Vanderbilt worked meticulously on this story. And when David Fincher picked it up, he became meticulous in his own right. Like everyone, and Mark Ruffalo, he plays Detective Tochi. He was following him around. A lot of these actors shadowed anyone who was left alive, shadowed who they could here. And everyone went into the web, the spiral of the Zodiac murders, just in making this movie. Chilling and so well executed and so sharp looking as well. But we're going to open on a murder scene. Lover's Lane. This dude, he's got a Little Caesars hot and ready right in the driver's seat. She's ready to go, and he's like,
little cutie, but married, I guess.
You know how back then people would be like, I'm 17, I guess it's time to get married.
That's true. She drives through the drive-through, says, oh, this is too busy, let's go somewhere quiet, and she puts her arm around him. I loved it.
A car pulls up behind them and flashes a light, and it seems like the car is going away, and then the car comes back, and then a man approaches the car. They think it might be her boyfriend, husband, or whoever.
He does say, is it your husband? And she says no, but she acts as though she knows who he is.
Don't tell me not to worry. Who was it?
It's nothing.
And there is reason later to believe that she might.
And this man opens fire on the couple.
Man, you really creeped us out.
And at first, it seems very stylized when he first starts shooting, very slow motion. But the scarier part of the attack, as displayed here, is when he comes back and the shot is over the car and he shoots into the car, and it's just so plain. And this is the aspect that makes it terrifying in a different way. Horror is like fantasy a lot of the time, right? Where we're dealing with these creatures, these fiends, or maybe it's based on folklore. But we know in reality the things in real life that genuinely scare us. In the horror genre, there's surprisingly not a lot of movies that touch base on that, like here and there, And it seems like when the scares are more closer to reality of things we actually think about and things that actually happen to people, that they call it a thriller. Again, some of the scariest shit we'll see all month is in this movie, with the knowledge that these things actually happen.
It's true horror.
And I'm at least convinced that the movie did the best it could to depict it as realistically as it possibly could.
The amount of information that they were able to tell in a way that made sense at all is impressive.
This movie's like 2 hours, 40 minutes, and
it just goes, though. It does not feel
it's so compelling, and the flow of it all and the acting is so good. Well, we're getting letters. The San Francisco Chronicle, Robert Downey Jr. plays Paul Avery, a real reporter who worked there. Jake Gyllenhaal plays Robert Graysmith, the guy who wrote the book this is based on, a cartoonist who's on staff. Paul Avery reports on the Zodiac, and Graysmith is a cartoonist who is obsessed with it. He's with the code breaking. He's a bit of a nerd and aloof guy. Well, he's not. He's a bit of a nerd and straight-laced kind of guy, so others tease him about it. But
he's socially awkward.
The Zodiac Killer has sent letters to these newspapers, multiple newspapers. The police are then become involved, and that's we got Mark Ruffalo as Tochi and Anthony Edwards' character. I forget his name, but he was also very essential to the case. And Anthony Edwards' character represents a much more grounded aspect of this investigation. Someone who's keeping it pretty professional. And it sucks because at some point in the case, well, things do start drying up. He's like, I'm being transferred to a different department. It's
he requested
like too
it.
much. He approaches it sensibly, and he leaves the case for sensible reasons and gets transferred to a much less dramatic department.
It was a sweet moment because he says, I want to see my kids grow up. I can't do this on call all the time thing anymore. And he looks at Mark Ruffalo and says,
I'm not leaving you holding the bag on anything, am I? Okay.
Hey, you know what? Maybe I have a chance to try your Japanese food, the raw stuff.
And Mark Ruffalo loves this man, and they've been partners forever. And he understands. He can't let it go yet, but he understands.
I mean, this is something, as all these real players involved in this movie can attest to, that this is something that if you just dive in, you could be in this for a lifetime. And much like, you know, when we're watching The Town That Dreaded Sundown, we know because of our casual true crime knowledge that they don't catch that guy. And we know this the whole time here. What's so infamous, what makes it a web, a spiral, we will posit some. And the movie posits a specific suspect as well, but the movie does make note of certain aspects that does not connect the suspect that they present the most to the case.
And the reason that works so well in this instance is because the man who wrote the book is in the movie, and it's him trying to figure out who he thinks it is, right? It's not necessarily for sure the person. Really good possibility. It doesn't feel as though the director or the writer is trying to say, we want to push it on this guy. It's this man saying, I personally looked at all of this stuff and I wrote this book on it, and this is who makes the most sense to me. It
does seem like at the point of the book release and the film release in 2007 that the guy that they focus on a lot does seem like the most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And many people involved in the case, including Tochi, they acknowledge that they think it is him, but they do have to acknowledge that there is certain important evidence that does not connect him.
They don't
directly.
have anything concrete. It's all circumstantial. It's crazy weird circumstances, but... So
we get another murder by this lake, and all these take place in the Bay Area of California, with some talk about a murder in Riverside, California, which is south of there, that occurred in 1966 that might be connected to it all.
There's also a previous Christmas murder.
Yeah,
that's before this begins as well. He takes credit for that previous Christmas.
Yeah,
murder.
You know what's fucking weird is that there was like an astrological killer that was operating at the same time that was not caught. But the way he killed people in a variety of ways, but he would dump them in special places, like the way he would utilize the body. He would abduct, right? But he was killing on certain specific days. That are important to astrology. Like, it's just so fucked here. We get a scene in a lake, which is probably one of the scariest scenes we're going to talk about this whole month. And this couple is laying by the lake, and they see a man walking. And you see the man from far away, and then he disappears, like he goes behind a tree, and they're like, oh, I lost sight of him. I guess he's not there.
It is broad daylight.
It's broad daylight. And then a man comes out.
Oh my God, he has a gun.
Don't move. I want your money and your car keys. Okay. We're not going to do anything, okay? We're going to cooperate. Just tell me what you want us to do.
And he's got a hood on, and he's wearing a symbol. The circle, like a gun sight symbol. And we'll get into that symbol and where they might have derived it from. But yeah, it's a man dressed in a costume, and he's pointing a gun at them, and he has her tie him up. And then he goes and he ties her up and then ties him up tighter. And then the guy's like, I need to know if that gun is loaded because I know they're going to ask. And he shows him the clip. Like, yeah, I had bullets in here. He's telling his girl that everything's going to be all right. Then he pulls out a knife and just starts stabbing and stabbing. And the thing about all the blood and stuff, it's not like gory or anything, but it is CGI. And it had to be because apparently Fincher did insane amounts of takes. Like, there's some directors that just want to do like 50 fucking takes. So if you imagine this movie 2 hours and 40 minutes, and you can imagine that woman and that guy having to scream like maniacs for probably like 20 takes at least.
Yeah.
And you have to utilize CGI in those moments because they can't clean off her.
Reset that.
Yeah. But that scene of just watching that it's just so straightforward and cold. It's not like, it doesn't feel stylized. It doesn't feel like, there's not like music that's swelling and there's no signifiers. It's just the quiet, the sound, and the screams of these people as you just see a blade enter their body. And it's a second to actually watching the actual murders. It seems like this is as close to what that would look like as you could possibly get, and it is absolutely chilling.
It's horrifying. The first murder in the movie and this one also, he attempts to kill the men, but he does not care as much. And that's one part of this scene also that may have led into those 50 takes, is he stabs the guy a couple of times and then he goes crazy on the woman, and she is rolling onto her side at one point trying to get away from him. It is fucking brutal.
Both of those murders that we described at the beginning and at this point, the man lived.
Yeah.
And the guy
he
that
never went back to check the man. He was more focused on the woman.
Yeah, it was like he was just going harder. So yes, the letters are coming in and they're deciphering it, and with the help of Graysmith, it seems like each part of the movie has its own different lead. I feel like Robert Downey Jr. is a pretty significant lead in the first part of the movie. Introduction to the paper. He's kind of the guy that gets...
Then it goes into Ruffalo.
And Ruffalo, and the investigation turns up, and then in the end of it, like the last 45 minutes to an hour, it's all Gyllenhaal, right?
It's a true ensemble piece.
Yeah. And nobody is stepping on anyone's toes here either. And we also got Brian Cox playing this TV personality in which I don't think it was the Zodiac. I think they clarified that it wasn't. The guy that called in, he was like,
I don't want to be hurt.
Why is he calling?
I don't want to go to the gas chamber.
You won't get hurt if you talk to me.
You're not going to the gas chamber.
I wouldn't think they would ask for capital punishment.
We should ask the district attorney. Do you want me to do that, Sam? Do you want me to talk to the district attorney?
I'm gonna go.
They tried to say that the person who called in to set it up had a different voice, but then, someone from an insane asylum called, or mental hospital called and talked to this psychologist guy on TV.
Now, this all starts, the Zodiac Killer wants them to print these letters. And the papers, just so that they're not scooped by all the other papers, because they also receive letters, they all choose to throw them up. The San Francisco Police Department is really annoyed that they're publishing, and I think they stop for a while to police orders. But there's also aspects of the police, because these murders take place over like 3 different places. They don't have this broad shared database that they're like, oh, no problem, they're like negotiating this. And because this is such a high profile case, when people are getting interviewed and they're going to talk to people, they got the dude from Vallejo County, they got the San Francisco police, they got someone from another part of the county in the Bay Area. So when they all come in and they're interviewing suspects, you got 3 different guys here.
Those 3 main detectives from those 3 locations do really seem to want to figure it out and do seem to be sharing more, and later they help Robert. There's a 4th place where they fly out to, and Paul Avery goes as well, and they get in there and they're interviewing the cops, and they're like, and this is, I think, the 66 murder that they're trying to connect it with. They're like, oh yeah, we talked to Paul for like an hour. We gave him everything.
Right.
And they're like, why the fuck would you do that? And they're like, I don't know. We had it. We gave it. Because they were a little more removed, it seemed as though they were not as invested in this being part of this larger story that we need to be careful.
It seems like every time they go to a suspect at any point in the movie to interview a witness who might be correlated with a suspect, they're always like, yeah, I talked to this person. I talked to a cop about this 5 years ago or a year ago. Or like every time they think that they've turned over a new stone, it's like they find out that someone else has also turned that stone over. There's just a lot in the pot, and it's like too much in the pot.
Yeah, well, and there were no databases, and back then it was call us if you have any information. You would have tens of thousands of phone calls, and you had to follow up on every lead, or you might miss that person. And some people who had information were dismissed. I wonder too, the things that have shaken out since the movie, if it was more of those people going, well, I also called and I did know this.
Yeah.
But there were people walking in being like, I'm the Zodiac.
Yeah,
What?
of course. I think
It's
in the
so
movie,
crazy to me.
in the movie, they said like 2,500 suspects at some point, and apparently more suspects come up even today as people are reporting information about their own family members and shit. Paul Avery, Graysmith is like his buddy on this case, right? He kind of teases him, but Avery he's getting threatened by the Zodiac. He's going to meet places by himself for leads, which is super dangerous, but he's also drinking more and more and more. And I'm not sure when Robert Downey Jr. sobered up in his career. This movie came, I think Iron Man was like 2008. This movie came out like a year before that. I think he was sober by then, but I wonder what it must have been like to play this guy
who is literally dying of being an alcoholic.
Yeah, I mean, he essentially he doesn't drink himself to death. He has like emphysema because he smokes like a chimney as well. He's kind of the first one that just gives up on it in a sense, and Graysmith picks it up, and other reporters at the Chronicle pick it up because he moves to the Sacramento Bee. He has it out with his editor.
Paul, if you want to work here, I need 3 things. 1, stop boozing. 2, stop doing whatever else it is you're doing. And 3, cut this nonsense out.
Sweetest of Templetons, if at any time you feel my excellent work is no longer in step with this trashy provincial rag, I'll more than happily decamp for greener pastures.
Paul, I mean it.
He's also leaving at 10 a.m. and going and drinking. He's not doing his job.
It's his addiction problems.
He has lost everything.
Mark Ruffalo's character of Tochi, he's spiraling just almost as hard as we see Graysmith, and he gets accused because he did some...
I think he was writing to a newspaper trying to get them to do stories, continue doing stories, or trying to give them things to print.
Yeah.
And then when he did that, they were like, oh, now you've just gotten totally desperate and you're faking.
Yeah, oh, okay. So
that's what I understood.
I think I interpreted it like he was helping somebody do something for some project or some shit. I
could have misunderstood as well.
I'm sure it's how you said it.
He was smarter than that, I feel like. I don't know.
Well,
could have been desperate.
The Zodiac killer, he kills, we see those 2 couples, and there's more people he kills the prior year that we don't see. And then they're alleging that a connection into a 1966 case, and he also kills a cab driver in the car there, and they find a partial print. That print does not match to any suspect that they ever have.
And he starts...
But that print could be from anyone.
It really could be.
In a cab.
And it starts, well, it's in the blood. So they think it happened after the death. He starts writing, taking credit for other murders that they're positive he didn't do. There's a part where I think Robert goes somewhere and puts some doubt about a different case when they had someone arrested already for it. So things are getting a little fucked up.
Yeah.
And at this point, no one is on, it's an open case, but the only person who's still assigned to it is Tochi. It's essentially been given up on. Nothing's happened in like 3 years.
Well, they do know some things based on the time frame in which this watch came out. There's a Zodiac watch, and it has a crosshair symbol on it. This was like a real item. They also have a connection to The Most Dangerous Game. He mentioned something about like this book where people are hunting humans.
Mm-hmm. And it was a movie, and that's also, that symbol is also on films as they're starting.
Right.
So that symbol with the Zodiac watch and the movie, it could all just be a perfect...
And they got a boot print of a military grade boot. They got it in Vallejo, and which is a pretty huge evidence because it shows that you had to pretty much be in the military and go to specific stores on base. Every suspect that seems the most credible today all have military history. That seems to be like the one guarantee. But some eyewitnesses are claiming that it's a man with like thick glasses, kind of like mine, but a buzz cut. They're very much streamlined looking types. They do end up interviewing this guy named Arthur Lee Allen, who they do place in the Riverside area at the time because he had some issues with the people who were involved in being killed. And he got kicked out because he worked at a school and he was a creeper, a child molester. And he got in some shit for that. There's a scene where they go to this factory he's working at. This bald man comes out. He's not wearing glasses. He doesn't have a buzz cut. But he's got the Zodiac watch. And he's got the boots. He's wearing them. And he knows about the book, The Most Dangerous Game.
A friend told them that he had said to him a long time ago, I could kill people and go by the name of Zodiac.
A lot of rigmarole to get the warrants on this guy, and they try to play it pretty straight and by the law. They raid a trailer of his, but they don't find anything after that point that connects. I mean, they sent this guy's handwriting samples next to the Zodiac, even beyond what we see in this movie. They did the handwriting analysis for decades. He just didn't match up. And they actually had DNA that, of course, DNA was not really a thing at this time. And later, DNA did not connect to what they had. But they still think, you know, it's still highly possible because everything else just lines up so well that Arthur Lee Allen could be the Zodiac killer.
There's also a theory that it could have been two people working together.
My casual theory is that Allen may be responsible for the 66 murder, but the person by the Bay Area of Vallejo County may have been a different guy. That's based on anyone else can just look through any of this information, come to your own conclusions.
Anything that happened after the letters were printed in the newspaper could have been a copycat.
Robert Graysmith, he's the only one left obsessed. He's married to Chloe Sevigny and whoever she plays, I forget her name. And the marriage is like not good. Like the tension of it, he's just too hyper focused into. I understand when I get really focused in on something, I feel like I'm going crazy if I get shaken out of it for any reason.
For sure.
You get this feeling with Graysmith. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got that ADHD-ness. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love their relationship because the first date they ever have, it's the night that Avery's gone off on his own, and he's really late to the date. She forgives him of that. He starts telling her what he does and that he's friends with Paul Avery, and Avery went on this thing. She ends up encouraging him to call and check on Avery, going back to his house and waiting all night. She falls asleep on his couch at one point when finally gets the phone call. He's apologizing to her, like, I'm sorry, you've been here all night. And she sits up and she straightens her little glasses and she says, no, this is the most exciting date I've ever had. They have so much potential, and I don't know that they didn't get back together because even though their marriage is falling apart because he's disconnected, he does still love his children, and I do believe that he still loves her. He just has to follow this thing through. And she says to him the last time we see her, when he's in the thick of it, their apartment's like covered in boxes, and he's sitting on the floor and he hasn't eaten, and she just says to him,
Robert, it was just the date that didn't end.
You don't mean that.
A little. The kids miss you.
Can't have them see me like this.
Neither can I. So do whatever you have to. But finish this.
It was as though she was breaking up with him and he was saying, I don't want to lose you. And so it's like, okay, fucking put this to bed.
He would spend the next decade writing a book, so
yeah,
I don't
they
know
didn't
how
stay
that
together.
went.
I know he has a relationship with his children.
But Graysmith, he's hanging on. Tochi's off homicide. Paul Avery is somewhere in a bar drinking himself to death. Paul Avery essentially tells him to fuck off when he tries to go find him. He essentially is harassing Tochi, practically stalking him every time he gets new information. And then Tochi, at the end, finally listens to him and gives him a little bit of like his own side lead, but he's unofficially not a part of the case at that point. He's got this lead that it might be this guy who maybe worked in a movie theater. Zodiac mentions a basement, and there's not a lot of basements in California. So he goes to this guy's house, and he thinks he's got, based upon a movie poster, that it might match with this guy who drew movie posters. It might match with the Zodiac. And the guy who called and notified police that this guy might be the Zodiac, he goes to his house. And he goes to his house, and it's like this smaller, effeminate man. You can tell that he's at least not the guy we see based on stature who was killing people earlier in the movie. But the guy is fucking with him. Robert Graysmith is saying, these words, this font, the writing is by the guy that you said this was. And he's like, no, that's my writing, which allegedly is fairly close to the Zodiac style. And then it's this creep scene where Robert, he goes down to the basement with the guy, and then he just freaks the fuck out and he has to run away. But you know it's not him, but the guy it seems to be reveling in fucking with him.
Exactly. It's the same sort of person who would call into a television show for the attention and lie about it. Robert also has, I don't know if it's because he has blinders on because he's so focused in on trying to tell this story, or if there's a little bit of the social awkward, but he's a super nice guy naivete to him. But he will tell everybody what he's doing at any moment. If this had been the killer, he would have died that night. Because he just went to the guy's house. He did seem a little apprehensive, but he still went.
A little Asperger's, maybe? A little Asperger's there. He's a really great. Jake Gyllenhaal did a good job. All these guys did a great job.
He's so good. This movie's so good.
The one with the movie poster thing, it falls through. But as he gets more information, it's all keeps leading back to Arthur Lee Allen. So he goes to a convenience store. He finds out where he works. Mm-hmm. And at some point, Graysmith is like, I just want to look across from the guy and look him in the eyes.
His wife says to him, when will it be done? And that's when he wants to look him in the face.
So he goes to the gas station and he sees that Arthur Lee Allen is working there, and he stops and he makes eye contact with him.
Can I help you?
And I forget the actor's name. There's tons of actors in here who plays Arthur Lee Allen. He does a great job too. But he does have that look where it's like you're trying to, because he knows who Graysmith is because he's prolific. He's been interviewed trying to hunt him down. So if Allen is the Zodiac killer, he knows exactly who that is that's sitting in front of him. And that scene is great because you can't tell whether that actor does a good job because it's so vague. You can't tell if he's just casually threatened by this guy he doesn't know making dead eye contact with him.
Or annoyed.
Or just annoyed, or if he knows that that's Robert Graysmith standing in front of him. And the end scene, we get the guy who survived the initial shooting. It's an older actor, of course, because he was like practically a teenager.
It's been 30 years at this point.
They give him a photo lineup. Arthur Lee Allen is there in the lineup, a picture of him, and he points him out. Maybe it was more of a round face, but he does finger Arthur Lee Allen in the photos. And that's the end of the movie, and we get, where are they now? What happened to them? That is the movie Zodiac. Before we get into our final review of what I think is probably the best true crime movie ever made, let's go over we got Arthur Lee Allen, right, who's after all these years one of the biggest suspects. He's placed in correct areas at certain times of murders, specifically the 66 Riverside killings. And then you have the Zodiac Watch, the military boots, the most dangerous game.
The fact that apparently there was a creepy guy named Lee hanging out around that girl.
Yeah, in Riverside, right?
It was the first murder of the movie.
Oh, right. So, and he's ID'd by the 69 survivor. The cons, of course, are that the handwriting's never tested and DNA matches that came later, which seems like they could be pretty easily corrupted over a long period of time, do not match. And some people ID'd a guy that was less stocky, but he could have gained weight, right? And he had glasses on. We never see Allen, at least in the movie, wearing glasses. Now, another guy, I got a few more names here, and then I'm going to give you my theory.
Okay.
We got a guy named Robert Gaykowski. This is a guy in the area. All these are military background. This guy named Tom Voigt, who's one of the more prominent online Zodiac researchers, thinks that it's Gaykowski. This guy is mentally ill, and allegedly, one of the victim, Paul Stein's, his sister recognized Gaykowski. He attended the funeral of Paul Stein. And when you decipher specifically the letter that claims to contain his identity, the word Gyke, Gyke, like how someone might nickname him, and the Zodiac would do like these little misspellings. Gaykowski, out of everyone I'm talking about, matches the description like the most. There's a dispatcher that claims that there's a recording of Gaykowski's voice that was similar to the Zodiac's. But the cons here is that if it is Gaykowski, then it got muddled because there was this show called Mystery Quest, and this dude kept writing to the police. They called himself Gold Watcher, who sent all these letters claiming that it's Gaykowski, but this guy apparently was revealed to be this avid conspiracy theorist the presence of this guy and him getting in people's heads that he's interviewing, especially this dispatcher, might have corrupted some recollections on the case, which is why you really got to figure out how to find you can't just be some schmo going around talking to people, especially if you have a reputation of making a lot of outlandish claims.
Sure.
And that's kind of the biggest con to Gaikowski. But there's another guy. His name is Paul Duer, military background. Through research of his own son after he had passed away, his son was doing research on him, and he started uncovering all these things that seemed to correlate with the Zodiac case. The son's name, I didn't write down the son's name, but his dad was a violent guy, military background, and he was a part of like a militiaman, which is like a right-wing militia group. And he sent letters to communists, people he accused of being communists. He was an avid letter writer, and he would send these letters, and they would have symbology in it that was similar to the Zodiac. And this guy had a decoding background, and he owned this book called The Strange Ways of Man, which they discovered through this list of books that he was trying to sell. And in this book, The Strange Ways of Man, there's something about the victims of a murderer will become slaves in the afterlife.
Which was in the letters.
The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise. Then all that I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife.
He thinks our friend's a tad bit fucker in the head.
Also, he was very prolific in letter writing to fantasy magazines, and at one point where he commented on some kind of Tolkien fanzine about how much he liked this hooded outfit or some shit like that. Like, there's just a lot of like nerd crossover things that could influence a lot of look and symbols, and the fact that he did some code breaking in the military seemed to all kind of be very convenient. Duer, according to his son who wrote this book accusing him of being the Zodiac killer, that Duer would use these 1-cent stamps. And it's like this very libertarian thing where they would spite the post office because, I don't know, he had to pay 10 cents to mail something or whatever. So, and if you put a cent on it, the post office would often just send it through anyway. Well, on some of the letters, the Zodiac did the same thing.
They mentioned that in the movie, something about double postage.
Also, all of this investigation was picked up by the researcher Paul Haynes, who worked on the book All Be Gone in the Dark, which is a book by Michelle McNamara about the Golden State rapist serial killer. And Paul Haynes, a researcher on that book, was like, I think it's Paul Duer. So these are the three that are the most known, but I've got a new suspect, Angela.
Okay.
I think your father is the Zodiac killer.
Oh, stop it.
Listen, internet sleuths.
This is why you were asking me when my dad was born today.
Internet sleuths, I need your help. You're as good as real police and federal detectives. I'm going to help you out, all right? I'm going to throw on the screen right now her father's social security number and personal home phone number. You see it right there. I need you to get to sleuthing.
This is bullshit, you guys.
I'm pretty sure her father is the Zodiac killer. Now, my wife, who is biased on behalf of her father, keep in mind, she might say things like, oh, he was born in Michigan.
He was.
Oh, he would have been 9 years old during the first murders.
He lived in Tennessee.
Are you saying a 9-year-old has never killed anyone? I don't think so. All right, and
dad
all of
was
history.
So skinny and scrawny that he said once a gust of wind blew so hard that it picked him up off the ground.
You would have. This sounds like some shit you'd say trying to protect your father.
Also, in the 70s, my dad had a huge curly head of hair and a big old mustache.
Yeah, he wore a mask when he was murdering people. Okay? Don't let your emotions cloud you. This is why that people in my online group that we all think it's your dad, and we're not letting you into this online group because your biases are just too strong. There's a picture of her dad. Again, there's a social security number and his personal phone number.
My dad is a wonderful man and not a murderer.
Oh. Zodiac killer is probably nice to some people, you know? Anyway, so that's the movie Zodiac, directed by David Fincher. My personal favorite true crime, a movie based on a true crime event. We're going to give 1 through 5 each combined for best out of 10.
S tier.
It's the best David Fincher movie.
Yeah.
It's better than Seven.
The cast is fucking
It's
amazing.
better than Panic Room. He made a lot of movies.
Gone
Girl's pretty fun. I kind of like that movie. He made that one. But this is better than that.
Yes, I was a little anxious to watch this because I talk all the time about how much I love horror. I could watch a horror movie any day of the year. It doesn't have to be spooky season. But the true crimes can get to me for every reason that Bobby stated at the beginning of this recording. They can get under my skin. But this is such a well-made film that it doesn't matter what it's about. It's written so well. The characters are so well developed. Even these tiny characters who are only on the screen for a few minutes within this 2-hour, 40-minute movie make such an impact. Ione Skye as the mother who he fucks up her car so she swerves off the road, and he offers to take her and her baby to a gas station, and she jumps out of the car with her baby.
No, I don't think that was Zodiac. I think that was some other weirdo.
Absolutely. I do too, actually.
But
think
it's
it was
muddled
someone
for a
else.
reason. It's so much fucking crazy shit. It's just crazy just compounds crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And all those Bay Area wackadoos, it's probably those college kids from Berkeley and their communist ideas. That's something probably the Zodiac would say, her father. There you go, Zodiac. Right there. At the bottom, right under White Heat from David Fincher, 2007, is an S-tier movie. We mean it. The best film based on a true crime event. I don't even think it's that close. Yes, we got plenty more to go, and we got a allegedly real haunting next week for Truth at Thursday. And that said, check the show notes for links to other places to find us. Like, subscribe, tell us your Zodiac theories, and I need you to accept my theories that her father is the Zodiac. He was murdering people when he was 9 years
That's
old.
That's a big no. That's a big no.
Old.
Happy Halloween.
السهل